The Starlit War. The radiant hawk shot through the stars, its sleek body gleaming with the reflection of distant, dying stars. The vastness of space around them was silent, broken only by the impending sense of war drawing closer. All squadrons, prepare for formation. Rhea's voice cut through Kael's thoughts. Calm but urgent. We cannot let the Umbra Dominion secure the Nexus. We need to strike hard and fast. Kael's stomach churned at the mention of the Nexus. It was not just a strategic asset, it was a force, a power capable of remaking the galaxy. The Zenith Alliance had guarded it for years, but the Umbra Dominion's threat had grown too strong. The war, his mission, felt personal now. It was more than just duty, it was revenge. His wife, Lyra, and daughter, Ava, had been lost in a previous Umbra assault 5 years ago, and Kael had been left with nothing but rage. The communication crackled again. Kael, we've got incoming, Rhea warned. He snapped back into focus as the Umbra ships, black as the void of space, emerged from the shadows. Their weapons were ready, their intentions clear. Rhea, I'm locking on to their command ship, Kael replied, his pulse quickening. He trained for this, prepared, for years. But something was different now. His mind was clouded with a sense of dread he couldn't shake off. The battle raged on. Kael maneuvered the Radiant Hawk, expertly dodging enemy fire, while the overwhelming force of the Umbra ships pressed against them. His focus was on one thing, the command ship. His hands moved instinctively, his fingers dancing over the controls. Kael, watch your six, Rhea's voice cut through the chaos. Kael swung the Radiant Hawk around, narrowly avoiding a missile. His targeting system beeped, locking onto a high-ranking Umbra fighter. He fired, watching it disintegrate in a brilliant explosion. But even as he achieved victory, his mind wandered back to the Nexus. It called to him. A blinding light from the Nexus lit up the space ahead. The light wasn't from any weapon, it was something alive, something real, beckoning him. Rhea, I need to. Kael started to speak, but his words faltered as the light grew brighter. Suddenly, a blast sent him spiraling through space, the controls of his ship sparking and flickering. His connection to the battle, to everything, seemed to fade. The Nexus was reaching out to him. Kael, respond. Rhea's voice cracked through the static. Kael struggled to maintain control, his vision fading in and out. The Nexus had shown him something beyond this war. The stars seemed to whisper, and for the first time, Kael understood. The war was a distraction, a necessary conflict to force a choice. The Nexus whisper. As the Radiant Hawk drifted back into stable flight, Kael's hands were still trembling. The Nexus, an energy source, yes, but also something more. It was alive, and it had given him a vision, a truth. The war he had been fighting, the vengeance that had driven him for so long, it all seemed so small now. He couldn't explain it to Rhea or the others. How could he? They weren't ready to understand. Kael, are you there? Rhea's voice came through again, laced with worrying. Yeah, Kael responded, his voice distant. I'm here. We thought we lost you, she said. What happened? The Nexus. We're still not sure what it is, but we need to secure it. Kael paused. It's not what we thought, Rhea. The Nexus isn't a weapon, it's the key. It's guiding us. Guiding us? Rhea asked, the skepticism clear in her voice. You've been hit too hard, Kael. You need to get back here. We're being overwhelmed. He shook his head, his mind clear for the first time in years. Rhea, I don't think we're supposed to win this war. Not the way we've been fighting. The silence that followed spoke volumes. He wasn't sure if Rhea understood, or if she even could. But there was no going back now. He had felt the Nexus power, and it had chosen him. The galaxy's fate was no longer about victory, but about something much more complex. The silent choice. Kael's mind raced as the Radiant Hawk drifted through space. The vision of the Nexus, alive and conscious, had burned itself into his consciousness. He couldn't unsee it. It wasn't just a weapon to be controlled, but a living force that had been manipulating the war all along. Kael, Rhea's voice came again. What are you saying? The war is still going on. We can't just stop fighting. I can't explain it right now, Kael muttered. But I've seen it, Rhea. The Nexus isn't a weapon. It's the choice we've been blind to. A long silence followed. Then, Rhea spoke again, this time softer, more uncertain. You've lost contact with the rest of the fleet. If we don't stop the Umbra Dominion from getting to the Nexus, we'll lose everything. Do you understand? Kael closed his eyes. He understood. But it was more than that. The Nexus wasn't just the key to victory, it was the key to something else, something beyond the war. The heart of the Nexus. Back at the EOS Vanguard, Commander Orlan surveyed the battlefield, his mind burdened with the weight of their failing position. The Umbra Dominion was, Commander, a communications officer reported. General Thorne of the Umbra Dominion has requested a ceasefire to discuss terms. Orlan's lips thinned. He knew what this meant. Surrender, not peace. The Umbra Dominion wanted the Nexus, and they would stop at nothing to claim it. Put him through, Orlan ordered, his voice cold. The hologram of General Thorne flickered into view, his tall figure draped in dark robes. His eyes glowed faintly red, filled with the arrogance of impending victory. Commander Orlan, Thorne said, his voice smooth, it's over. The Nexus will be ours. Surrender now, and we can avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Orlan's gaze sharpened. You don't understand, Thorne. The Nexus isn't something you can control. It's a force beyond your comprehension. Thorne's lips curled into a smile, perhaps, but it doesn't matter. The war is over, and the Nexus is ours. The transmission ended, leaving Orlan to ponder his next move. Kael's message echoed in his mind, the dot pilot who had touched the Nexus and seen beyond the conflict. Orlan had no choice but to trust him. The final choice. Kael sat in the cockpit of the Radiant Hawk, staring out at the vast expanse of space. The battle for the Nexus was reaching its final stages. The Zenith forces were on the verge of defeat, and the Umbra Dominion had nearly won. Yet, Kael's mind was not focused on the war. It was focused on the choice. The Nexus was not just a power source, but a force of balance. It could destroy the war, but it could also reshape everything. It was a decision that transcended factions, beyond the petty politics of the Zenith and the Umbra. Kael, Orlan's voice crackled through his calm. We need you. The war has come to a head. Are you with us, or against us? Kael closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his decision. The Nexus had shown him the truth. The war was meaningless in the grand scheme of things. What mattered now was the choice to end it, to transcend it. I'm not fighting for either side, Kael responded, his voice firm. I'm fighting for something greater. As the Nexus shimmered before him, Kael knew what had to be done. He activated the final sequence, and the energy from the Nexus flooded into his ship. It wasn't an explosion, it was a wave of consciousness, of understanding. The war ceased to matter. What followed was the dawn of a new era, the age of balance. The war was over, the Nexus had released its grip on the galaxy, and the factions Zenith, Umbra, and all others. Others had been forced to confront the truth. There was no winner in the traditional sense. But there was a new understanding, a balance restored. Kael stood on the bridge of the EOS Vanguard, watching the stars. The galaxy was shifting, healing from the scars of war. The Nexus had brought about the end of the conflict, not with weapons, but with enlightenment. I made the right choice, Kael whispered to himself. The war is over. And with that, the stars continued to shine. The end.